Welcome back to Concepts of Programming. In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to animate a name or a word. Now, we've pretty much covered almost all of the different sections in the code, but what we're going to do today is we're going to cover sound. So, in our top three tabs, we have code, costumes, and sound. With every sprite, we have various sounds that are given with them. And in the case of our cat, we have the meow sound. So if I were to click the blue button, it would play. And as you can see here, we have a couple different settings for the sound. I can use Scratch to change it from faster to slower, louder, or softer, and I can do various things with the sound. I can also reverse the sound, or change it to a robot voice. And in any case, to undo it, all I have to do is click the undo button up top. So with sound, just like with our sprites or with our backdrops, we can import them from the sound library. And Scratch has a really big sound library. In order to hear any of these sounds, I can just hover my mouse over the little purple play button. And we can pick sounds from this, which we will do later. In addition, sound has a category to itself. We have various different blocks for it. So the first block is the play sound until done, and when I click on this, it's just going to play it until the program is done, typically once or so. We can also start the sound and stop all sounds. So the way stop all sounds would work was if I were clicking this and I clicked stop all sounds, it would stop whatever sounds are going on. I can also change the pitch and volume effects. So pitch is basically how low or high something is. With my meow sound, it plays at a relatively high sound, so it sounds pretty high. By changing my pitch effect, what I do is I change the pitch, or how high it is, by 10. And when I change that positively, it gets even higher. So positive pitch goes up, negative goes down, meaning if I were to put a negative sign here, the meow sound is going to get lower and lower every time. Typically, I'm going to reset the pitch effect to 100 or lower. But basically what these two do is they allow us to change the pitch higher or lower. I can also clear sound effects. And when I click on this, the meow sound goes back to normal. The other important thing about sound is just going to be volume, which we're not going to be using in this program, but what it does is I can set the volume level higher or lower. Just like on a computer, when you set the volume higher or lower, I can do the same thing with my Scratch noises. So typically I'm going to start my volume at 100, and when I click the start sound meow, I can use the change volume button in order to make it lower. In order to make it higher, all I have to do is make it go up. So with this, what I can do is I can have my sound. I can play the sound multiple times. I can stop the sound. I can also change the pitch higher or lower. I can clear all of my effects, and I can set my volume to a certain level. The next thing we're going to look at, which we haven't looked at much in previous projects, is going to be backdrops. And the idea of backdrops is they are the background. So when I click this, we can choose a backdrop, for example, circles. And the cool thing about backdrops is I have this stage bar here. And when I click on the stage bar, I can actually select and code it just like it's a sprite. So with sprites, how we have all of these blocks that we code for the sprite specifically, I can select the stage and I can code it. One easy way to check if the stage is selected is the stage can't move, so there are no motion blocks. But I do have sound, looks, and pretty much everything else. And for this program, we're going to be coding a lot in the backdrops. So the thing about backdrops is there are some slightly different things in looks. Whereas in my sprites, I have say, next costume, change color effects, moving. What I can do with my backdrop is I can change the backdrop to various things. So I can switch my backdrop to the next backdrop. And just like how with my sprites I have costumes, for my backdrops I have various costumes or backgrounds. So what I can do is I can add in by choosing different backdrops, and I can switch in between them, meaning I can switch my backdrop to hearts, or I can go to my next backdrop. And this is just going to allow lots of different backdrops to be changing while my code is running. So for now, I'm going to delete these backdrops, but we are going to use that for our code. The final main thing in looks we're going to talk about is going to be color. So my cat right now is this nice orangey color. But what change color effect works is it's basically layering a color over my current sprite. So my sprite right now is orange, it's white, it's black. But when I change my color effect, I can completely change the effect of the color by a certain amount. So with this idea, I can change my sprite and my cat from orange to pink. The other important thing is I can set my color effect to 0, which is basically going to reset my color effect. And I can also click clear graphic effects, which is going to be important. So I can change my color effect and I can change it to various things. But what clear graphic effects does is it clears whatever effects I've put on it. So not only with color, but I can also add a fisheye, or I can change it to a whirl, or I can even pixelate it or turn it into a mosaic. But the basic idea is I can change a lot of different settings for this one sprite just from using this change effect and looks. But when I click clear graphic effects, it's just going to reset my sprite back to normal, and we're going to use that in our program today. So for the actual project, since we're animating a word, I'm going to get rid of this cat. So we're going to use a lot of sprites for this, and what we're going to do is we're going to pick a word around 4 or 5 or however many letters you want. Typically, you can animate your name, but for this project, I'm just going to animate the word scratch. So what we're going to do is if you scroll down to creating a new sprite, you see there are a lot of sprites, but near the bottom we have just 3 different types of alphabets. The top one is going to be this orange one, the middle one's going to be this cool blue one, and then the last one is just going to be this greenish one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a sprite, and this sprite is just going to be whatever letter is the first letter of my word. In this case, for scratch, it's going to be S. So all I have to do is click on it, and I have my letter out. So depending on how long you want your word to be, you're going to need to leave a bit of space for the other sprites. So I'm going to move my S somewhere around the side of the screen. Now for this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my control, and I'm going to say when green flag clicked, I'm going to go to my current location. And we're going to animate this letter. So the first thing for this letter I'm going to do is I'm going to have it rotate back and forth. So I'm going to have it reset to pointing in direction 90. So when I click the green flag, it's going to always point in direction 90. Even when I turn it upside down, it's going to reset here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to really quickly talk about the angles of a circle, because this is going to be important. So for math class, you should probably know that in a circle, when I go from one line, one area, all the way around and back, that's going to be 360 degrees. So the idea with this is if I want my sprite, or if I want my object to end up in the exact same place it was before, pointing in the same direction, I'm going to need to rotate it 360 degrees exactly. So this is shown even better with our dial here. Right now I'm pointing in the direction of 90 degrees. But when I turn it all the way around, I need to make a full circle back to 90 in order to get it to point in the right direction. So in order to get 360 degrees, what we're going to do is we are going to animate the movement to turn multiple times. And what this means is I'm going to have a loop repeating. But every time inside of my loop, when I turn a certain amount of degrees, I need to make sure that in the end I turn 360 degrees total. So if I were to repeat one time, turn degrees, a certain amount of degrees, If I click this, it's going to turn 15 degrees. But if I want to turn it 360, if I want it to end up back at 90, and I click on this, it's going to turn 360 degrees and end up back pointing at 90. So obviously, as demonstrated, when I click on this, you can't really see it moving. And that's because, first of all, there's no weight, and second of all, it's just too fast. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to basically repeat multiple times and have it turn a certain amount of degrees every time and adding weights in between. So we're going to have it turn some amount of degrees, wait so that the user or the viewer can see it, turn again, wait all the way until it reaches back at pointing in 90, having turned 360 degrees. So if I repeat once and I turn 360 degrees in order to end back pointing this way, if I want to turn twice, what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to turn 180 degrees in between each. And I'm going to add a weight. So the reason we turn 180 is because 360 divided by 2 is going to be 180. So when I click the green flag, when I click this code, we're going to see it turn 180 and turn back. And it's going to wait 0.3 seconds in between. But if I want to show this full turn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the weight faster, first of all. And instead of turning 180 and 2 times, I'm going to turn 4 times for 90 degrees each. Because 4 times 90 is 360. So when I click on this, I'm going to be able to watch it turn around. And as you might be able to tell by now, the more times I repeat it and the more weights I add, the smoother it's going to be because the more times I see it actually go to the location. So if I repeat, say, 8 times, and then I turn this to 45 degrees, when I click the green flag, it's going to be a full rotation, which is going to be really neat. I'm going to add just a couple more times so that it looks just a bit smoother. If I repeat 10 times, and I need to turn 360 degrees, I'm going to turn 36 degrees every time, because 10 times 36 is 360. So now when I click the green flag, I'm going to have a very fast, or still slow, but I'm going to have a very smooth rotation. So when I add this code on, and I click the green flag, I'm going to animate my first letter. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to have all of the letters appear one by one. And the main way I can do that is I'm going to broadcast. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wait 0.5 seconds, which is just going to have the user just have time to look at it. And then I'm going to broadcast a message. Now, if you might remember from previous programs, the way broadcasting works is that we have a certain code that runs. And as soon as this message is called, it's going to broadcast to every sprite and every backdrop around that this thing is broadcasting, this message is broadcasting. And when this message broadcasts, we can use the when I receive message to code some things. So once this program finishes and broadcasts, I can have my next sprite do its thing from the when I receive broadcast. So the thing I'm going to broadcast is going to be my next letter, so the second letter. So when I broadcast this, my second sprite, or my second letter sprite, is going to be able to receive it and start its code. Now make sure we add this wait in between the code and the broadcasting, just so that the user has a little bit of time in between. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to broadcast, and I'm going to add my second sprite. So we're going to go back to choose a sprite, but instead, we're going to keep scrolling down. Instead of going to this orange font, I'm going to pick from the blue font next. So with Scratch, S, C, etc., the second letter is going to be C. So I'm going to grab the Glow C. And when I grab this, I'm going to move it to approximately around where I want it to be. And what I'm going to do is, the way I'm going to animate this is it's going to start near the bottom. And by the way, when you drag your sprite near the bottom, make sure you drag it somewhere where it has a little bit of space around the edge. And then you drag it in, otherwise it might not actually go. So drag it in so that it still has space and you're still able to see it. And I'm going to have it start near the bottom, and it's going to fly up to my location. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say when I receive second letter, I'm going to set my size to a certain amount. So the first thing I need to do is, if you guys remember, we use size in order to change how big the letter is. So if I change it to 200 or 2000, it's going to be huge. But if I change it to 50, it's going to be smaller. So what I'm going to do is, obviously because I don't want the C on screen when the green flag is clicked, I'm going to say when green flag clicked, I'm going to hide, and I'm going to go to this location. And then when I receive second letter, it's going to set my size to 50%. And this is just because I'm going to be changing my size in this program, so I need to be able to reset it when I start. I'm going to make sure it shows. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to point it in direction somewhere to the top right. And this is because I want my sprite to fly in here, and I'm going to set it to a direction where it can fly there. So this runs, and then this runs. So I'm going to have it actually move towards the location I want. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat 20 times. And I'm going to add a very small weight so that the user can actually see what it's doing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it just move 10 steps. So if I click the green flag, it's going to move 10 steps to somewhere around here. Now, if you don't want your sprite to end up all the way around here, what I can do is I can actually change the direction ever so slightly so that when I click this and click the green flag, it'll end up in a location I want. So you can change the direction and change the amount of times it moves just so that it ends up in a good location where you're okay with it. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change my size by 5 every time. And not 50. And what this is going to do is it's going to say every time I move 10 steps, the size is going to increase just a little bit. So when I click the green flag, my C ends up in a relatively normal size. So obviously I don't want my C to overlap, and I don't want it to face directly upwards the whole time. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat 3 times. And I'm just going to turn around 15 degrees with a weight in between so I can see it. And all that this is going to do is it's going to tell my program that I want my sprite to turn back to face the right. So if I click the green flag now, it's going to turn, so even though it's still a bit tilted, it's at least facing somewhere to the right. So what this is going to do is it's going to allow my sprite to face somewhere near the right when I end up actually coding. No, I'm already actually coding. So when I play this program, what it's going to do is it's going to allow my C to face somewhere near the right. Now obviously, you're going to need to do a little bit of guessing and checking for the space in between the letters, because that might not end out perfect. So what I can do is if I find out, say, the C and the S are too close together, I can change it to go to a different location. So for example, I can have my S go to -215, -1 instead, just so that I have enough space between it and my C. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my 0.5 weight. And I'm going to broadcast the third letter. So this is important. I can't broadcast second letter again because that's just going to make my program happen all over again. I need to create a new message, in this case called third letter. And this is just going to allow my third sprite to run and appear as soon as my second sprite, or the C, is done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my third letter. And for me, this is going to be an R. And for this, we're going to head all the way to the bottom to the last font. So I'm going to grab the R, move it to around where I think is right. And what I'm going to do is this sprite is going to be used with sounds. So we're going to go back up to the Sounds tab. And what we're going to do is we are going to actually add another sound. So for this, you can pick whatever sound you want. But for me, I'm going to go to the effects. And I'm going to pick... the whiz sound. So I'm going to scroll down. And I'm just going to grab the sound. So the thing with Scratch is it's really nice. It organizes all of the sounds. So when I click on effects and I can scroll down to whiz, I can click on this and grab my sound. So as soon as I click on it, it'll put the sound inside of the sprite and we're good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first set up my sprite. So I'm going to say when green flag clicked, I'm going to go to my current location. Again, make sure you leave enough space for the other letters. And I'm going to have it hide. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say when I receive third letter. Again, be very careful about this part. Make sure you're receiving third letter and not second. And I'm going to show. And then what I'm going to do is, since I have my sound, the great thing about this font, being the third font, is that I have lots of different appearances for my actual sprite. I have different costumes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use sound and costumes together. And I'm going to repeat 3 times because there are 3 costumes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the sound. I'm going to change the pitch effect. And I'm going to go to the next costume. So what this is going to do is it's going to basically change my costume 3 times. And every single time the costume changes, it's going to play the sound and it's going to be a little bit more high-pitched than last. So obviously I do need to reset it afterwards, so I'm going to say stop all sounds in the end and clear sound effects. And this is just so when I play it again, it doesn't continually get more and more high-pitched. The final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a wait 0.5 seconds. And this is because we're ready to broadcast our 4th letter. So again, make a new broadcast. And that's pretty much all I have to do for this sprite. So now when I click the green flag, it's going to animate the turn, then the movement, and then it's going to change the appearance of this sprite. Since there are only 3 different types of letters in Scratch, we're going to get the orangey version. So I'm going to look at my next letter, which is going to be A. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to drag it somewhere around here. So for this letter, we're going to again have to reset. So we're going to say when green flag clicked, go to our location, and hide. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say when I receive 4th letter, again make sure it's 4th letter, we're going to show. So for this sprite, we're going to be using the backdrop. So we're going to go to the backdrops button here, the blue one, and we're going to choose a backdrop. And for this, you can pick any backdrops you want as long as you pick 2 of them. I'm going to go with circles and the blue sky. So after you picked these 2 backdrops, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go and code inside of the stage. So again, just click anywhere around this bar, it's going to turn blue, and it's going to let us code inside of the backdrop location. So remember that broadcasts work for every single sprite in the backdrop, meaning I can also say when I receive 4th letter inside of this backdrop. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to repeat 3 times, and I'm just going to switch my backdrop. And this is done in looks. We can switch backdrop to. And with this drop down bar, what I can do is I can actually go to next backdrop. So with our backdrops, we do have an order. So all this is going to do is it's going to repeat 3 times. It's going to change from backdrop 1, the number being here, to backdrop 2, to backdrop 3, and then back to backdrop 1. And obviously I do need to wait a few seconds in between, just so that our users can actually see the backdrops changing. So now when I click the green flag, it's going to wait and it's going to repeat 3 times, changing the backdrop. So that's all there is to code for our 4th letter. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another wait 0.5 seconds. Remember that we're still in the backdrop. And I'm going to have it broadcast 5th letter, just so that our next letter can go. So we're almost done, only 2 more letters left. Again, since we're going in kind of a pattern, this part is optional. We're going to go orange, blue, green. So I'm going to go and grab the blue font. And since the word, again, is scratch, I'm going to grab the T. So with this, I'm going to put it here. And I'm going to set it up just pretty much like the other letters. I'm going to say when green flag clicked, hide. And I'm going to go to my location. Now again, make sure that you're leaving enough space for your other letters. If it seems jam-packed, what you can do is you can move some letters. So say I want to move my R backwards, what I can do is I can just update my location. Obviously, since we can't exactly map, well, you could map all of the letters out in the beginning, but what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we do have enough space for our other letters. So I'm going to move my A back just a little bit so that the C and H near the end will have enough space. So for our 5th letter, we're going to go to when I receive 5th letter, show. And I'm going to use the color effect. So I'm actually going to repeat 10 times. I'm going to change the color effect, which again is going to be in looks. And we're going to say change color effect by 25. So when I click this, it's going to go really fast. So I'm going to add a wait of 0.3 seconds in between. After that, I'm going to clear graphic effects, just to make sure that it doesn't continually change the colors weird. So this way, after the 10 is over, it's going to clear and it's going to go back to this original color. So the other thing we're going to do is we're going to wait 0.5 seconds. And then we're just going to broadcast our 6th letter. So this is going to allow the C in scratch, the second C, to be able to appear. And I'm going to choose a sprite, and for this I'm just going to go and grab the C, that's this green font. And what I'm going to do for this sprite is, again, I need to set it up, so I'm going to move it somewhere up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say when green flag clicked, go to, and hide. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say when I receive the 6th letter, I'm going to go and play a sound. So I'm going to go to the sounds tab and I'm actually going to add another sound. So for me, I'm going to use this B trumpet sound. But again, you can pick whatever sound you want. So I'm going to click on the sound. And then I'm going to repeat 3 times. I'm going to play the sound B trumpet until done. So repeat 3 times. And I'm also going to change the volume by -10. And this is just so it sounds like the trumpet is fading away. So when I click this, it's going to ever so slightly fade. Now, the trumpet sound is a little bit fast, so we are going to add a wait 0.5 seconds in between. At the end of this, we are going to reset, so we're going to clear sound effects, and then that's all there is to the C. So we're going to wait 0.5 seconds, and then we're going to broadcast our last letter. Now that I finished with the C, I do have one more comment about the code. I did forget this, so what we're going to do is we're going to add the show on top, just to make sure it does show. So with our last letter broadcast, we're going to create our last letter. I'm going to go back to the original orange font. So I'm going to click on the H. I'm going to make sure this shows just so I know the location. And I'm going to put it somewhere around the end of the page. So for this, we're going to start with our basic when green flag clicked, go to our location and hide. And then when we have received, again, make sure that you're really careful about the broadcasts. So I'm going to say when I receive last letter, I'm going to show, and then I'm going to repeat 3 times. And this is because I'm just going to have my little thing. I'm going to have my letter move forward, move back, and just tilt slightly a couple times. So I'm going to turn 15 degrees, wait a second, or actually 0.3 seconds, and then I'm going to turn 15 degrees the other way. And then at the end, I'm just going to add a wait 0.5 seconds. So what this should do is it should basically have my H move forward, move backwards, and then do that a couple times. And now we're actually pretty much done with our animation. So if I save this and I view it, we have animated our first full word. So obviously, if you're animating a letter or you're animating a name, you can do this and you can add more effects or combine effects. So say it's changing color and it's playing the trumpet. But for now, we're going to end with this scratch word. So feel free to have fun with it.